Captain Kelsfer, I think we are cleared for takeoff. Oh, your first mate, what? Grendel just chugged an entire tub of catnip. Okay, no, that's perfectly fine. We'll just put him in the back. Regardless, I think we have everyone on board. Oh, just kidding. There's one more person here. Hold on a minute. Hello, are you boarding? Awesome. Do you know how to fly a plane? Any chance? No. Okay, don't worry about it. Can I see your ticket, please? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Welcome on board flight 1234 en route to various destinations this year. No, yeah, it is a whole year long. That is what your ticket said. I don't know if you were aware of that, judging by your one carry-on. You weren't, but not to worry. We do have lots of books on board to keep you entertained throughout the year, and lots of books. Grab a seat. Have you been on our airline before? Yes. Okay. Amazing. How was your experience? Yeah, but our pilots are cute though, aren't they? So does it really matter if your food goes flying every 30 minutes in the air? Anyway, can I get you started with a drink this evening? Okay, perfect. We only have mojito, is that okay? If you have been a passenger with us before, you'll know that the people on board normally get to vote about where we're flying to in the year. This year, you don't. Here's your mojito. It's alcohol-free. Can't say the same of our pilots. Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome back to my channel. It is Flight Attendant Emma at your service, and you know what time it is. It's time to fly the world once again for the World Tour Book Club, 3rd year in a row. For the past 2 years now, I have had the World Tour Book Club that I've hosted on Fable. Link is in the description. Everything about it is free to join. I have wanted to read a book from every single country in the world for I don't know how many years I've been doing this challenge now, but eventually I decided I wanted to do it with a group of people from all over the world because that just sounded so cool and so amazing. And that's one of my favorite things that I love about the YouTube community, the booktube community, all of you guys, is that we're literally like all over the world. That is what we have been doing. For the past 2 years with the book club, we have read from 20 different countries. So in this video, I'm gonna be telling you about the 2026 World Tour plans. As you get comfortable, pull out a magazine, get some headphones, watch a movie, I don't know. Let's do the safety instructions first. I know your attention span is gooped up, so please enjoy our flight attendant entertaining you with the cat wand. Please keep yourself in the vehicle. That's it. We don't have any safety accoutrements, and our pilots are cats, so good luck to you all. That's about it. Have a nice flight. For the past 2 years with the book club, I've basically been asking you guys to vote each month on the book that we're going to read. There are several changes this year. First of which you might have heard is that you don't have to vote anymore. I'm gonna take that choice right out of your hands. I have created, curated, put together a list of my very own this year. The second big change to the book club in 2026 is that we are going to be going to less countries this year. We're gonna have more airtime, more time relaxing, reading, spending more time with the books, reading potentially, because of this, a few bigger tomes, not to fear, also a few slimmer volumes on the way this year. But this year, instead of reading one book each month, we're gonna be reading one book every 2 months. And of course, it's already February. It's already February, so we took January and February off, and now we're ready to pick back up and get on our way. We're gonna be reading 5 books in 2026, and we will be starting in March. I wanted 5 books that would get kind of all the aroundness of the world this year, and I also wanted them all to be different. Some of them are different genres, a lot of them are different lengths, like I said, and I wanted them to kind of speak to each other. There are some of these that I think are going to speak to each other really, really, really well. So without further ado, let me tell you where we're going to be reading from. That was my wrist in 2026. Now that I have you all gathered here, I thought it would be a good time to tell you where we are going this year. If you can, please take a minute to locate the seat pocket in front of you, and when you have a moment, please pull out the folded piece of paper that's in there and start rolling it out. The first country that we will be reading from in 2026 for March and April is going to be Iran. I have put Iran on the poll in the World Tour Book Club. I think it's maybe 3 times, definitely twice now. The books on there haven't been picked yet, and so this year I was just like, you know what? I have gotten so many suggestions from books from this country. It took me so long to pick the one that I wanted to read with you this year, but I think we have it. The book that we're going to be reading is a recommendation from so many of you. I continually see this book come up, and this year I really looked deeply into it and I was like, that's the one. So the book we're going to be reading for March and April from Iran is My Uncle Napoleon by Iraj Pezeshkzad, I think. So many people have recommended this to me as, first of all, a fantastic book, but also as one of the funniest books that they've legitimately ever read. This guy was published in 1973. The book is actually set, though, in 1943. This is a book that was banned shortly after the Islamic Revolution, as it very heavily criticizes and mocks the Iranian political scene of the 1970s through the eyes of a family living during the Second World War in Tehran, I believe. It is a coming-of-age novel, but I think the way that it's like set up, from what I've read of it, the countless reviews, countless interviews, countless just things I've read about this book, is very, very, very wondrous and funny and interesting. We do have satire, we do have farce. It is a longer book, so brace yourselves, but the way that I've arranged it this year, I've made sure that if we're reading a slightly longer book than normal, we do have a shorter book afterwards to accompany us and just to balance out the months, and you can obviously, like, you know, dip over into other months if you want and keep reading the book. It's no big deal, no big pressure. In 1943, we have a family living in a big, beautiful, lush mansion in, I think, the style of like 19th century, I believe. It's gorgeous. The patriarch, Uncle Napoleon, or at least he's called Uncle Napoleon. That's not really his name, of course. At this time, Iran has been occupied by the Allied forces, and this Uncle Napoleon figure is very paranoid, maybe a little bit delusional, and just has these fantastic, frightened ideas that the Allied forces are specifically in Iran to take him. So the narrator of this book is not actually the title figure. The narrator is the title figure's nephew. The three families all live together in this big mansion ruled over by Uncle Napoleon, but our protagonist has fallen in love with his cousin, who is also the daughter of Uncle Napoleon, and he does not want his daughter marrying our protagonist. On top of that, I believe our protagonist's father and his brother, who is the Uncle Napoleon, are feuding. All the while, our protagonist is trying to make sure that the love of his life, his cousin, is not marrying the person she is supposed to be marrying, and he is trying again and again to like stop this wedding from happening. We have the Uncle Napoleon, and then he also has, I think it's his manservant potentially, and they were involved in the army to some capacity, but they have these imaginations or memories or ideas that they have been fighting British lackeys in the army, which is not what they were doing. And so Uncle Napoleon is quite worried, like that's the reason he thinks that the Allied forces are there. He thinks it's the British specifically coming to Iran to take him away. This leads to him writing letters to Hitler, begging him to take him to Berlin. The book and the TV show, apparently there is an absolutely iconic TV show from, I think, also the 1970s that was made of the book. Both the book and the TV show are banned in Iran. I think the TV show of My Uncle Napoleon was also one of the most popular TV shows ever in Iran. If you're looking for something deeply funny that also discusses the country's very serious issues, then My Uncle Napoleon is the one for you. I think even more so because literally right now, and since December 28th, I think it has been, Iran has been having protests, like the biggest protests since the Islamic Revolution. A lot of what this book talks about, even though obviously it's from the 70s and it's written or set in the 40s, early 1940s, it is just so deeply relevant to what is happening right now. I wanted to put Iran on the list, and we have My Uncle Napoleon. Also, the author, look at this man's mustache. This man has probably the best stash I've seen in a long time. For book number 2, there is an author who I've really wanted to read with the book club for a while. I've read from her before. She's fantastic. We're going to be reading from this country right here. Can you see that? Do you know what this is? We're going to be reading from Antigua and Barbuda. And the author we're going to be reading from is Jamaica Kincaid. During my undergrad, we read A Small Place, which I just really highly recommend. I would honestly say, please, if you have time, if you want to, I would highly recommend picking A Small Place up before we get to our pick, if you're able to, because this is an essay from Kincaid, just talking about everything that Antigua and Barbuda has gone through in terms of colonization, and particularly in modern day tourism, and how this affects such a small country, such a small island. However, the novel that we're going to be reading from this country is actually Annie John. Annie John was published in 1985 and is primarily set in 1950s colonial Antigua. Jamaica Kincaid grew up in Antigua before moving to, I believe, New York to work as an au pair. Annie John is also another coming of age story, but very, very different, like extremely different from My Uncle Napoleon. And this is where I said, if you're like, oh, you know, some of these book club picks this year are a little large, don't need to worry with Annie John, because I think this one comes in at around 160, 170 pages. Coming of age does follow Annie, who's growing up, going to school, going to class, learning, having some really deep, close connections with some girls in her class. But above all else, this is about the relationship between Annie and her mother. So it's very much a coming of age in terms of how a daughter and a mother relate to one another and how their relationship changes, sometimes in really brutal, tragic, not so great ways as they both age. So the quotes, my friends, that I have read from Annie John have been beautiful, mesmerizing. They just like stake you through the heart, and I'm really looking forward to reading my first novel from Jamaica Kincaid. For Annie John, I do want to read you just this one quote from it. Just this one quote, see if you want in, see if you want out, I don't know. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see my mother. Out of the corner of the other eye, I could see her shadow on the wall, cast there by the lamplight. It was a big and solid shadow, and it looked so much like my mother that I became frightened, for I could not be sure whether for the rest of my life I would be able to tell when it was really my mother and when it was really her shadow standing between me and the rest of the world. As a young child, we know that Annie is just like enamored with her mother. Her mother is her whole world. And as she grows up and becomes a young lady, and now there's talk of like marriage and all this stuff, we know that her mother enters into some weird competition with her. I just think it's going to be such a wonderful examination of the relationship between women, especially between those who are related and between a mother figure and a daughter figure. I think it's just going to be fantastic. So that is Annie John. And I also just love when, like in My Uncle Napoleon, one person, one character in the book can stand in or can be representative to however much of a degree you want it to be the country that we're talking about. So whether we're talking about Iran or Antigua and Barbuda, I'm imagining her mother, Annie's mother, does stand in some part for Annie's feeling about the island and Antigua and growing up there, because we also learn about the island and her culture and what it's like growing up for her at this time period during the 1950s when they're still under British rule. I'm so excited to read more Jamaica Kincaid. It's been years for me, and I'm just really looking forward to this one. I was able to find Annie John quite easily through my local library, so hopefully it's available to you in the same fashion if you're able to. But yeah, this one seems like it's hopefully more of an easier pick to get your hands on. We're going to be voyaging back over the Atlantic Ocean all the way to Uganda. So this is the most recent publication on this list. It was published in 2014, but our story begins actually in 1750. The book is Kintu by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi. It looks like Kintu, but I promise you it is pronounced Kintu. This is like the Ugandan novel. In Kintu, we learn about the history of Uganda through 5 different people, all belonging to the Kintu clan. We see in 1750 that a curse is actually placed on the bloodline of Kintu, who is the man that we follow in 1750. We jump through the years to follow a different person each time, throughout history, throughout the bloodline, throughout Uganda's history as well. This novel is actually divided into 6 books, or 6 sections. In an ambitious tale of a clan and a nation, Makumbi weaves together the stories of Kintu's descendants as they seek to break from the burden of their shared past and reconcile the inheritance of tradition and the modern world that is their future. However, there is a myth about this mythical being. I'm not sure if he's totally a god or what you would really characterize him as, but Kintu is known in mythology as the first man ever on Earth. But in here, Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi makes him just a man. So that is that one. The next book for September and October is going to be totally different genre. If you can see, my cat toy is on Manila in the Philippines. The novel that I have picked from this country is Smaller and Smaller Circles by F.H. Batacan. We're going to have a little bit of Manila Noir with us this year. This was published in 2002. But set in 1997, and again this one is a bit of a shorter work after reading something like Kintu. In northeast Manila's Quezon City is a district called Payatas, a 50-acre dump that is home to thousands of people who live off what they can scavenge there. It is one of the poorest neighborhoods in a city whose law enforcement is already stretched thin, devoid of forensic resources and rife with corruption. So when the bodies of teenage boys begin to appear in the dump heaps, there's no one to seek justice on their behalf. In the rainy summer of 1997, 2 Jesuit priests take the matter of protecting their flock into their own hands. We have two priests that we're following throughout the novel, and one of the other things that I read immediately about this novel that I was really like, oh, that's a little bit different, I want to see so much more of this, is that because it's a crime novel, it's a mystery novel, it's a noir, whatever, you typically don't know who the murderer is, who the villain is, who the thief or the criminal or whoever it might be. You don't know their identity. In smaller and smaller circles, the reader knows them apparently almost immediately. Like, it's not something for you to figure out. It's not something for you to piece together. The author implicitly gives you the identity of the murderer. The two priests that we are following, one of them, on top of being priests, one of them is a forensic anthropologist and the other one is a psychologist. And because the law enforcement is so corrupt and so, I'm assuming, underfunded and not really available to give their services to solving what is happening to these boys who are going missing, who are literally living in poverty and living on a garbage dump, the two priests take it upon themselves to solve the mystery, track down the killer, and find out what's going on. This one is one of the ones on this list I'm most excited for, honestly, because I think it's going to touch on so many different topics. And last year and this year, I've also really fallen in love with, like, you guys know I love detective novels, but I've come to realize that I love them for a lot of different reasons, and I've come to love a lot of noir novels recently. Something straightforward, like The Big Sleep. We're questioning something deeply in most cases, and in most straightforward cases, it's a murder or a crime of some sort, whether it's theft or blackmail or assault, whatever it might be. But what I love about the detective novel, and I think Murakami does this, and Murakami talks about this, I think he was the first one I heard talk about it. I just love when a detective novel starts to question so many other things and becomes a critique and a call to action for something. In smaller and smaller circles, we have priests who are obviously supposed to be caring for their flock, providing guidance and teachings of the church or whatever. They literally have to get involved in their country's justice system because there's not enough going on there. That's the kind of detective work that I'm really excited to see, again, a literal detective novel do. This one is very easy to look at through an ecological lens as well, because in Payatas, I think it was I wrote it down, 2 or 3 years after this novel, 2 years after the novel was published, there was actually a landslide that happened in the year 2000 at this dump site that killed hundreds of people and left so many people homeless. That's where Smaller and Smaller Circles is set, like in this dump site. We do have more information about the dump site now that we're going to be reading about. So, well, in the 1990s, the dump site in Payatas was like huge. I think it was like 130 feet tall. It was like the landmark in the area. It was described as like a volcano of trash. The dump site permanently closed in 2017, and I think right now it's still closed, but I think there are plans to make it either into a park or to an area where we're doing like renewable energy stuff. I'm really excited to see what she does in this book because I know she is a journalist as well. I have not read a novel from the Philippines. I'm so flippin' excited. Let's go. I have been having so many people this year and last year and over the years. Like, it's kind of funny how often this book keeps coming back up. Every time I say that I love snow or I love the winter or I love this time of year, so many people are like, well, then you have to read this. It's very popular. There's a film. So many people love this book. So I was like, let's put it on the list. Let's go to Denmark, but let's also go to Greenland. Let's go back and forth between the two of them. The book is Miss Smilla's Feeling for Snow by Peter Hoeg. Published in 1992. I think it's set in and around that same time period, but this is a thriller. I think this is going to be our first thriller for the book club. I don't want to wait almost a whole other year to read this. I kind of want to read this right now. So we have Smilla, who at the start of the novel is living in Copenhagen. She has an Inuit mother who, I think both her parents have passed away now, possibly. So she has an Inuit mother who she grew up with in Greenland. And she also has a Danish father who I think is very well off, kind of more the aristocratic type. And I think he's a very well off doctor. One day she becomes quite close to another Greenlander, a young boy who is in Copenhagen, and I think lives in the same neighborhood as her. Unfortunately, one day she sees this small kid die, and the police say that he fell off of a roof of a warehouse. A little weird. What was he doing up there? Everyone is quite comfortable and happy to accept this explanation that the kid, who's maybe like 5 or 6, was just playing on the roof of the warehouse and fell off, and that's how he met his end. Smilla, on the other hand, is not very content with this explanation, and she's actually quite suspicious of what actually happened in the final moments of her young friend's life. She doesn't believe the explanation that the police have given because she has a feeling for snow. She has a sense for snow. An attunement. She has an attunement to the snow. On top of being raised in Greenland, she also, I believe, is a scientist or was a scientist who has had years of experience with snow. And it's various forms, it's various evolutions, its various manifestations, and she knows that something is wrong with this crime scene because of the way the snow around the crime scene is. I'm getting so excited explaining this to you. This is like everything I want. She goes on a bit of an investigation herself. This one does begin in Copenhagen, but eventually we do go back to Greenland and we do get taken, I believe, to the high Arctic, and I'm so flippin' excited. We have the detective elements back again, but this does examine the relationship between Denmark and Greenland. Also examines how people in Denmark treat people from Greenland. I'm assuming we're going to be looking a lot at the Inuit communities in Greenland, and I'm really flipping excited for this. I don't know if this is the first sentence or one of the first sentences, is it's freezing. An extraordinary -18 degrees Celsius, and it's snowing. And in the language, which is no longer mine, the snow is Kennick, big, almost weightless crystals falling in stacks and covering the ground with a layer of pulverized white frost. It's absurd how many times this has been recommended to me in different places over the years, so it's finally here. That is our list. For 2026, we're going to be reading from Iran, Antigua and Barbuda, Uganda, the Philippines, and Denmark. Those are the 5 that I picked for 2026. I hope they are to your liking, and I hope you join us. Please give a round of applause to Captain Kelsifer. He did a fantastic job. Until then, sit back, relax, enjoy the flight. Ciao.